two masked men stormed into the house of a Texan grandmother. The moment they saw the woman, the two of them understood what a grave error it was. That day, they realized they had entered the wrong home. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video with your friends. In an effort to take Grandma Rose's treasures, two men broke into her home. However, the elderly woman had other ideas for the robbers. Grandma Rose was a 60-year-old widower who resided in Harris County, Texas. She'd been on her own for 3 years. The elderly woman led a tranquil life and made an effort to be as active as she could. Although Grandma Rose occasionally received assistance from her daughter, she was accustomed to managing everything on her own. Would she, however, be able to handle what came next? As Grandma Rose lived in an area where there had been more robberies than usual, she was concerned. Several of her neighbors tried to increase security measures in response to their fear. Grandma Rose made the decision to take action to safeguard herself as well, but it wasn't simple. She couldn't buy a home alarm or anything complicated because of her limited resources. So, what was she to do? Grandma Rose had to take additional precautions at all times because she lived alone. She didn't want burglars entering her house to take her belongings or perhaps hurt her. But what actually could the elderly woman do? Except for sporadic visits from her daughter and grandchildren, she lived alone. She was aware that she had to be watchful. But would that be sufficient? The countrywide recession had recently begun to affect the elderly woman. The economy was struggling, and she could no longer buy all she needed. The woman had to put her own needs for utilities and medicine first. Because of this, when she was threatened with losing her belongings to a robbery, she took a daring action that shocked the entire nation. The elderly woman worked nearly her entire life. She started working when she was 16 years old and didn't stop until she was 50 years old and forced to retire because of health issues. Although she could no longer accomplish as much, the grandmother kept herself busy by tending to her small backyard garden whenever she had the opportunity. Still, she anticipated some peace since she was getting older. Sadly, that wouldn't happen. No matter how little money her possessions were worth, she valued them dearly. These weren't only objects. They were recollections of the lovely life she had created there in that house with her devoted spouse. The elderly woman was prepared to respond to two criminals who tried to rob her of her most priceless possessions. After all, she valued those items more than her own life. Everyone who knew Rose adored her for her independence and strong character. Her disposition, though, would put her in a lot of perilous circumstances. The two men who broke into her house had no idea who they were messing with or what she could do when provoked. Grandma Rose was not the kind of person to run away from danger, even though she was fairly old, but was her response the best one to make? Two neighborhood guys got the terrible notion of breaking into people's homes and taking their possessions. They thought it would be simple as pie when they eyed some calm communities where the majority of residents were elderly. They had no idea that that would be their biggest error ever. The residence they chose wasn't actually that simple to plunder. A pair of young men mistakenly entered the wrong house on that day. It was their belief that no one was home, or that if someone were home, they would not protest, and would simply let them do it. As a result, they expected to be able to flee easily. It couldn't be further from the truth. Grandma Rose decided to stick to her plan, instead of backing down so easily. It would turn out to be a costly mistake to choose her home. The burglars forced their way inside Rose's house with a crowbar and slowly entered until they reached the living room. They were looking for valuables. At first, they thought no one was home as it was completely quiet, but the two would soon find out that Grandma Rose had something special prepared for them. As soon as she heard them, she decided to take action. Grandma Rose quickly withdrew to her bedroom where she had hidden an old gift from her late husband in a box. It was the thing that would save her. The old woman then headed to the living room and confronted the two men. When they saw her coming at them, the burglars froze on the spot. They thought the old lady must be crazy, but she wasn't planning on letting anyone take her beloved treasures. When Grandma Rose was face to face with the burglars, she pointed something at them and yelled to leave the things and go away. At first, they didn't see what it was, but then they realized the old lady had a weapon. The thing is that they were also armed. But once the old lady fired a shot, the two burglars freaked out and started running. The old woman fired several rounds at the suspects while they fled the scene, hitting one of them. The suspect collapsed and passed away in the woman's front yard. the other man managed to get away by jumping a fence, and police subsequently initiated a search to apprehend him. Grandma Rose was not harmed in the break-in. The story of how Grandma Rose defended her home made the news all over the country. People who saw the story being shared on social media congratulated the old lady and said she did the right thing. Rose was still shaken by the event, and she never intended for things to play out like that, considering that one of the burglars lost his life in the process. But when you decide to rob a house in Texas, that's a risk you must consider. However, this type of scene happens more often than you may think. Recently, Willie Murphy, an 82-year-old woman from Rochester, New York, protagonized a thrilling yet humorous episode which earned her the admiration of everyone who heard her story. However, it could have ended tragically. It was probably one of the most dangerous moments in Willie's life. Only God knows what could have happened to her if she hadn't reacted fast enough. Willie Murphy is a well-known character in her neighborhood in Rochester, New York. She's been living there all her life and is revered as one of the community's elders. She's always nice and kind to everyone she encounters, and all her neighbors love and respect her. But that isn't all the lady is known for. Mrs. Murphy has a certain hobby that makes her very different from most people her age. At 82 years of age, Willie Murphy is an ardent powerlifting enthusiast. She's won several awards, like the World Natural Powerlifting Federation of the Year Award in 2014. She also holds the national records in the bench for reps, the strict curl, and Iron Maiden categories. Despite being 5 feet tall and weighing 105 pounds, she can deadlift up to 225 pounds. Everybody is not able to power lift, Murphy said. A lot of older people, they are into swimming, yoga, tai chi, various other things, but I guess I'm just unusual because I'm into natural powerlifting. Usually, she goes training at her local YMCA gym almost every day. However, there is something about the place that has always been somewhat irking to her. She's the only senior citizen and the only woman who works out at that gym. I was surprised that people were thinking that it was strange of me to be in the gym with mostly young men, Murphy said. However, she never let that circumstance discourage her. This is what she has told the media about her devotion for this discipline. But I kept getting stronger and stronger, and I don't wear any belts, I don't use chalk, and I don't use the ammonia like other people when they compete in a competition. It just happened. I guess I'm just one of those things that nature has taken good care of me. And that's not all. After she snatched several records for her age bracket in her 70s, the World Natural Powerlifting generation had to create a whole new category just for her once she turned 80. However, Willie couldn't imagine that one day her hobby would save her life. It was late at night in Rochester, and Willie had just finished washing the dishes after cooking and eating dinner by herself in front of the TV. Most of her nights were like that, and she didn't have a problem with it. She took solace in routine, and the certainty that each day would finish the same way, with the same peace and quiet. However, that night would be different. It happened a few minutes after Willie went to bed. After reading a few pages of a novel, she turned off the lights and lay down, expecting a night of deep slumber just as usual. But just a few minutes later, she heard something. Some noises were coming from the living room. Probably something fell from the side table, she thought, trying to ignore it and fall asleep. But then she heard it again. Instantly, she felt a chill down her spine. Now, there was no mistake. Someone was banging on the door. The knocks were loud and violent, like whoever was calling was in distress. Willie woke up, went to the living room, and walked towards the door while the person outside kept banging. "What's going on?" Willie asked. Then she heard someone hollering from the other side. "Open the door! Call an ambulance!" a man hollered behind the door. "Who is this? What's going on?" Murphy repeated. "Open the door, please! An ambulance!" The man kept going on. Murphy looked through the door's peephole. The man didn't look like the kind of person she would let into her house without asking questions. He was dressed in dark clothes, wearing a hood and a face mask. What if he was trying to set her up and rob her? She decided to call the police and let them handle the issue. But the man kept hitting and hitting the door. The strokes kept getting harder and harder. Eventually, he started charging against the door and ended up breaking through it. All the while, he kept yelling. And right then and there, all hell broke loose. For a few seconds, Murphy became paralyzed with fear. Her heart was galloping and her mind went blank. But immediately, Her fight-or-flight response kicked in, and the anxiety became pure adrenaline. She was ready to take action. She knew what to do. In a matter of seconds, she was ready to handle the issue by any means necessary. "It's kind of semi-dark, and I'm alone, and I'm old, but guess what? I'm tough," she recounts. "He picked the wrong house to break into. I took that table, and I went to working on him, and guess what? The table broke." Then the intruder tried to get up and charge back at Murphy. However, the 82-year-old was ready. Murphy ran to the bathroom, got a bottle of shampoo, and poured it all over the man's face, impairing his sight. After that, she hit him some more with a broom. "He wants to get the heck out of there, and I'm trying to help him get out of the house. But he's too heavy. I can't move him. He's dead weight." Shortly after, the police, alerted by a neighbor who could hear all the noise coming from Murphy's house, arrived at the scene. "The officers that came wanted to go on my front porch and take selfies with me," she recounts with a smile on her face. As the investigations revealed a few days later, it was, in fact, a setup. The man had been trying to make Murphy let her guard down so he could enter the house with his accomplice, who was hiding in a corner but ran away after he saw how the scene unfolded, and rob everything they saw. However, they didn't know who they were dealing with.